Welcome to the first Collegetown class of 2021, everyone. Collegetown class is a rotating workshop series that features and highlights our alumni of the Collegetown LeaderSHAPE program, the Collegetown Fellowship, and Collegetown Underground. Sonce Reese, who is here with us today, as well as her colleague Laura Nichols from the American Red Cross, will be delivering today's class. Sonce is a graduate of Class 6 LeaderSHAPE, a Class 7 on-site, and then also the Collegetown intern. So Sonce is a Collegetown champion, and we're so excited to have her back teaching today's class. And now, without further ado, I am so excited to pass it over to Sonce and Laura. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maddie. So it's great to be here today. Really appreciate the opportunity. Again, my name is Sonce Reese. I am a disaster program specialist with the American Red Cross, as well as an alumni of Class 6 LeaderSHAPE and the on-site coordinator and intern for Class 7. I brought with me today my colleague, Laura Nichols, who is the preparedness regional lead at the American Red Cross. And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about emergency preparedness, but first we're going to show you a short video.
How prepared are you? From fast-moving wildfires to slow-moving hurricanes, crippling winter weather to dangerous heat waves. From powerful tornadoes to devastating earthquakes, record flooding, destructive home fires, and many more unexpected hazards. Hazards are inevitable, but with the right kind of preparation, you can lessen their impact and make a difference. How prepared are you to protect what matters most? Most people say they're not prepared, but that they want to be. And others have started to prepare, but don't know what steps to take next. That's why we created the Be Red Cross Ready program. We'll provide the instruction, information, and experiences you need to be prepared to protect what you care about most. Gain knowledge and skills from Be Red Cross Ready preparedness experts in real time. We'll show you what hazards affect your community and tell you what you can do before, during, and after a disaster occurs so that you are ready to take action. And we'll practice ways to stay safe. Just by being here, you've taken the first step, because when you are prepared, you can protect what's most important to you. Prepare so you can protect yourself, your family, your community. Be Red Cross ready. Prepare so you can protect.
So we'll be spending about 50 minutes with you this afternoon, going through emergency preparedness essentials. If you have any questions, please feel free to post those in the chat. We may answer some of those questions going forward. If we do not answer your question, we will answer your question at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So the fact is that disasters happen. So they happen often, they happen with little or no warning. They happen anywhere and at any time. Every year, communities across the United States face disasters. So hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, winter storms, which we just saw a few weeks ago and a month ago. Also wildfires, which we saw in Oregon and California, burned through thousands of square miles, and home fires impact thousands of households daily. Next slide, please. So which hazards do we face? So in our region, past experience tells us we face a number of hazards. So in this area, we face home fires, which we just talked about, earthquakes, which we saw a few years ago. I can't remember which year, but there were a couple of them back to back. Hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, extreme heat, which we see in the summer here in this area, thunderstorms, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, and then also winter storms. Next slide. So in any of the disasters that we've talked about, a lot of people assume that someone else would be there to help. However, the resources just aren't there to support everyone immediately. And I'll give you an example. We just had a multifamily fire in Middle River. It happened in the middle of the night. So our responders, when I say our responders, one of them was me, had to get up in the middle of the night, get dressed, and go to that location. I lived at least 30 minutes away. So add 30 minutes to the time that it takes me to get up, get the call, get my clothes on, and get to the scene. We're talking at least an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. First responders, disaster organizations, government agencies, and hospital emergency rooms do their best. But on average, these groups are staffed and prepared for normal day-to-day operations, and resources may be limited during a disaster. So when we respond, we also have to do our day-to-day work as well as responding to the emergencies. The truth is, we will have to depend on ourselves first. Why? Because roads may be impassable, so fire trucks may be in the way, may not be able to get through, or other hazards may be in the way. Utilities may be unavailable because the power may be off, so that more emergencies don't occur. Hospitals and first responders could be overwhelmed. Banks, grocery stores, gas stations, pharmacies, schools, and workplaces may be closed for days, especially in the event of a hurricane or a tornado or a large winter storm. You may also need to help others, such as members of your household, neighbors, or those who have functional or access needs. So don't count on receiving help right away. Next slide. All of us can and should be prepared to help ourselves and our households. Will preparation be perfect? Absolutely not. Will preparation make things quick, easy, or painless? Not always, but planning and preparation will help you be safe and recover quickly. What does it mean to be prepared? So you can add that to the chat, what your idea of being prepared means. So have proper resources on hand. Correct. So when we are prepared, we can exactly have supplies. We can take protective actions to be safe. We can react in the right ways. We can adapt through tough challenges and recover quickly from difficulties. We should, and we'll talk, somebody put ready to go bag. We'll also talk about that a little bit later on. Laura?
Thanks, Sonce. So what does it mean to be prepared? To be Red Cross prepared, three things. The first is get a kit. Your kit should contain supplies you need at home and can easily carry with you if you have to evacuate. We'll be talking about what kinds of things we want to put in our kit here shortly. Making a plan is your second step. Identifying the steps you need to take to respond to specific disasters, especially those that are going to affect you in the area that you live. To be informed. Finally, it's important that you know that you are informed. So learning how you'll get information when a disaster occurs, what resources are available in your community, it will all allow you to respond quickly and help yourself and your household and your community. So let's look at each of these steps in a little more detail, starting with getting a kit. So if a disaster strikes in your community, you might not have access to food, water, electricity, medical services, or even a drugstore or pharmacy. So preparing a disaster kit for your household is an important step to keeping everyone safe and healthy during that disaster. So we recommend that you consider putting together 2 kits. In the first kit, you put everything you need to stay at home for at least 3 days. If you're able to, over the course of time, we would encourage you to work together enough supplies for that kit to last about 2 weeks. And the second kit, which we often call a go bag, should be a lightweight, smaller version of the first kit that I was referring to. And that would be something that you would want to be able to take with you if you had to leave your home quickly. So it would contain everything you would need to be on your own for up to 3 days based on the needs of the members of your household. So there could be one kit for your entire family, or depending on what your household needs, there could be a kit for each member of your family. And then you can customize those to meet everyone's personal needs and to the disasters that are common to your area, of course. So building your kit, let's talk about what this means and what to put inside of it. So we want to think about the things that we use on a daily basis and what we might do if those resources are limited or not available. So we can start with basics like food, water, clean air, or any life-sustaining items that, again, that the members of our household might need to maintain their health, safety, and independence. So can you think for a few minutes about some of the basic supplies that might be needed in an emergency? And there's some examples in the picture here. So things like, well, water is a really obvious one, right? And we actually recommend a gallon of water per person per day, which is a lot of water. But in part, it can be for drinking, but in part, it can also be for sanitation. And it may be that you need more than that, depending on what the needs of the folks are in your household as well. So that's a pretty obvious one. Non-perishable food items, right? If we're talking about canned food, or then we need a can opener so that we can open the canned food, right? We might need extra water to go with the dehydrated foods that we might have stored in our emergency preparedness kit. And keep in mind, you might be without water or might be without electricity. So that's something to keep in mind as you plan food. Things like flashlights, or battery powered hand crank radio. There's a NOAA weather radio that you can get to receive weather statements if you don't have electricity. Like I said, the hand crank one, so you don't even need to worry about the battery. Extra batteries for things that do require batteries, like your flashlight, right? A first aid kit, 7-day supply of your medications or medical items that people in your household need. Copies and paperwork are critically important because sometimes people have to leave without them. So at least having a copy of a prescription or a dosage for the medication they're on, or treatment information, right? So it's a copy that we keep in that emergency medical preparedness kit. Backup batteries for any power dependent mobility devices, if someone's on oxygen, or if someone needs devices to sleep or to breathe, right? Making sure that we have the battery backup power available. Any kind of multi-purpose tool is a good idea. Sanitation or personal hygiene items are a good idea. Any copies of personal documents, like we already talked a little about medication and assistive devices, but things like might be the lease or the deed to your home, passports and birth certificates, or insurance policies, right? Because if you have to leave and if you have to evacuate your space and you don't have those things readily available, it's really hard to follow up and get help with them when you're trying to go back and find that initial information in the first place. So cell phones and chargers, emergency contact information for the people in your household, but also who is our emergency contact outside our household. And we'll come back around to talk a little bit more specifically about what that means later on and why that is important. Cash is a good idea. An emergency blanket, right? At least one emergency blanket. Maps of the area are also important, especially if you might have to evacuate, because sometimes our electronic devices and our data and cell phones do not work the way that we expect them to. So don't feel overwhelmed by this list. Preparedness is a process. It takes time. So consider building your kit one step at a time. Focus on a few items each week until you feel like you have what you need inside of it. And also don't forget that you absolutely want to include your pets or service animals when you're making a kit, right? Because we also have to feed and water our animals. Okay. Let's move on and talk a little bit more about customizing. So I kind of already indicated this a little bit earlier, but you are going to want to customize your kit based on specific needs of the people in your household, right? So if we have someone who has difficulty hearing, it may be that we want to focus on getting a weather radio that has a text display instead of just the sound. And there might be other things we want to consider if we have a diabetic in our household. What are the medical supplies that that individual might need? Again, the assistive or adaptive devices, including supplies for our service animals. If we need communication boards or tablets, if we have infants and small children, what are their specific needs, right? Bottles, formula, baby food, not just adult food. Pet supplies, again, the collars, the leashes, their identification. And then we also recommend including an extra set of vehicle keys and house keys. So you would be surprised how much of a challenge that can present during a disaster. Okay, so a spare set of keys is a great idea. And then a few additional supplies that we have. So, and I apologize because I cannot see the chat in my my shared setting right now. So we'll come back around to that and make sure I haven't missed anything, because I'm sure I'm interested to hear your responses and questions. But any additional supplies that you might keep at home or in your kit might include like a whistle, matches, rain gear, work gloves, an extra hat or clothing or sturdy shoes, duct tape, scissors, like bleach or cleaning supplies. Sometimes entertainment items is one thing that we don't want to forget about, because often we talk to children about what to do in an emergency, and not only to be prepared, but to also be mentally and emotionally prepared, and how to manage your own stress and come up with coping mechanisms. So an entertainment item like, what's going to distract me when I get worked up or stressed out or worried, or the people in my household, right? If I know that, okay, that a disaster happened and now we're trying to have a moment, or we want to find a way to manage our anxiety. So an entertainment item, it might even be stuffed animal for children, or special blanket or something like that. And then, of course, things like blankets or sleeping bags, depending on what the type of emergency is and the season, right? So we might edit our kit as we go through different seasons a little bit. And then things like sunscreen and insect repellent, again, seasonally appropriate. So, and no matter what is in your kit, it's really important that everything works in a disaster when a disaster strikes. So you want to keep an eye on the expiration dates for food, medicine, and batteries. And check it at least twice a year. Of course, replace anything that is near its expiration or expired. Okay, and then the other thing to think about is that since we don't know where we'll be when a disaster occurs, we want to consider preparing supplies in our work or in our vehicles. And so that may include our kits for work may be in one container, a bag or a backpack, again, kind of a ready to a go bag, like we mentioned before, a grab and go in case you get evacuated. And you might recall earlier this year that there were a number of people who were evacuated from their office buildings surrounding the Capitol. And you just never know what might happen, but things like some food and water, comfortable walking shoes, right? In case that you have to evacuate the space that you're working, are some examples of things you might keep there. A kit for your vehicle is also important in the event that you ever are stranded. So again, things like food and water, first aid supplies, flares and jumper cables, and again, the seasonal supplies, depending on the season that you're experiencing, blankets or extra clothing in the winter months, if you ever are stranded in your vehicle, are a good idea. Okay, let's talk a little bit about making a plan. So different hazards require you to take different actions. For instance, during a tornado, you may need to move to a basement or a storm cellar or an interior room on the lowest floor with no windows. But during a hurricane, we don't tell you to go to the basement because flooding is an element of hurricanes, right? So we don't want to be downstairs. We want to be in that interior room with no windows, but not down on the lowest floor. So, or for a home fire, everyone needs to evacuate immediately and meet in their safe meeting place, which Sonce is going to talk more specifically about home fires in a little bit. But what we would encourage you to do is talk with everyone in your household about how to prepare for and respond to the hazards that are most likely to happen where you live, work, and play. So and identify responsibilities for each member of the household so that you can work together as a team. And that means who is responsible for the pets? If we have to evacuate, or if something happens, who's responsible for the pets? Who's responsible for the small children? And then what happens if those people aren't here when that emergency or disaster happens? Who's the backup person for those things, right? So making a plan is a really important part of emergency preparedness. Individuals with access or functional needs may need to prepare differently, creating a personal support network that helps plan and provide assistance if the disaster happens. So, and again, remembering not to just depend on one person. They will want to include about 3 people in that network. So you have a backup for the first and a backup for the second, and then practicing, right? So that also helps everyone stay calmer when there is an emergency, if there has been practice and a chance to go through the things that that you would do in that emergency and hone in on what your plan is. Okay, so making a plan includes some key details, right? What are 2 ways to evacuate from every room in your home, right? This is what we teach children when we help them and we talk about being prepared in the event of a home fire. 2 exits from every room in your home, 2 exits from your neighborhood, 2 exits from your town, right? Or depending on how big the disaster is. And then planning what to do if your household gets separated during a disaster. What are 2 places to meet. So not just that first meeting place that's outside the space that you live that you would evacuate if there was a sudden emergency like a fire, but also a meeting place that's outside your neighborhood in case you can't return home or are asked to evacuate. So, and with that, you want to consider any transportation challenges that might be encountered by the people who use mobility or assistive devices, or those who don't have access to a vehicle. How will they get to that other meeting place when they can't get back in the neighborhood? That kind of thing. So, and then of course the communication, which we're going to come back to. But if you or members of your household aren't together when disaster hits, making sure that everyone has contact details for everyone else and that they have the information with them are also elements of your of making your emergency action plan and being prepared. What important records do you need? Does your household need? Where are they stored? Where do we have copies of them in our emergency preparedness kit? And then if we're without power for an extended period of time, having a place to stay, right? If we have to evacuate or if we don't have power, where are we going to go, right? Having a plan for that. Because like Sonce said, sometimes these things take time. So if we already have a plan in place, that we might be able to make things move along more quickly than if we have to wait and rely on external resources. And finally, if the authorities encourage you to shelter in place, making sure all of your household members are aware of the things that they need to do, right? So they're prepared. It's not just us. It's really about the team that is our household and that we're all on the same page.
So we're going to talk a little bit about home fires. So let's look at some of the major causes of home fires and home fire fatalities. Cooking equipment is a leading cause of home fires and home fire related injuries, and it accounts for 19% of home fire fatalities. Malfunctioning and improper use of heating, electrical, and lighting equipment together account for 35% of home fire fatalities, while only 5% of home fires are started by smoking materials. These fires are a leading cause of home fire fatalities. So how can you reduce the risk of fires in your home? Some home fires can be prevented by following basic safety tips. If you recall, 25% of home fires are the result of malfunctioning or improperly used heating, electrical, lighting equipment. You can reduce this risk by remembering safety tips. More than half of the deaths resulting from home fires are caused by heating equipment that is too close to things that burns, such as your space heaters when it's cold, Make sure anything that could catch fire, such as furniture, curtains, dish towels, or clothing, is at least 3 feet away from any heat source. Remember, 3 feet from the heat. Always plug appliances directly into wall outlets. Avoid extension cords. Extension cords are intended for temporary use. If necessary, have a qualified electrician add more outlets in your home to reduce the use of extension cords. Avoid overloading outlets or extension cords. Don't plug multiple power strips or extension cords with several items attached into the same outlet. And then also make sure electrical cords aren't damaged, running under carpets, attached by nails, or in high traffic areas. Next slide, please. Failing to properly extinguish smoking materials, including cigarettes, pipes, and cigars, is the leading cause of residential fires in the United States. If you or anyone in your home smokes, including guests, remember to smoke outside. If you do smoke indoors, never smoke in bed when drowsy, or if anyone is using an oxygen tank. Use deep, sturdy ashtrays and always properly put out the butts. A good douse of water before disposing them is best. And then keep matches and lighters out of children's reach, preferably in a locked cabinet or container where they're out of sight and children aren't able to access them. If you vape, never leave it charging overnight or unattended, and always use a charger that it came with. Replace batteries that are wet or damaged. Next slide, please. So smoke alarms. So now that we talked about safety tips for reducing the risk of home fires, I want to remind you about the importance of working smoke alarms. Did you know that research conducted by the National Fire Protection Association shows that 3 out of every 5 home fire deaths happen in homes with either no smoke alarms or non-working smoke alarms? Not only that, but having a working smoke alarm cuts the risk of dying in a home by half. There are some very important things to remember when it comes to smoke alarms. Install your smoke alarms on every level of your home, inside your bedroom or inside the bedrooms, outside of sleeping areas. It's also highly recommended that they be interconnected, so wired. This way, when one alarm sounds, they all sound. And then test the smoke alarms monthly using the test button. Replace the batteries at least once a year for those alarms requiring battery replacement. Replace the smoke alarm itself every 10 years. All smoke alarms, including hardwire units, should be replaced every 10 years. And then I know it can be tempting to disconnect the smoke alarm when it goes off while you're cooking and your kitchen's a little bit smoky. But never disable a smoke alarm, even temporarily. Using the silence or hush feature if you're getting a nuisance alarm is best. If you experience frequent false alarms, consider relocating the smoke alarm to another area that's close to that area and not directly in that path where it'll set it off continuously. Other individuals and those who are deaf or hard of hearing are particularly at risk during a home fire because they may not be able to hear the sound of the smoke alarm. So there are devices that are available to overcome these challenges. They can use a low pitch sound or vibrations under the pillow or mattress or strobe lights. Additional resources for individuals with access or functional needs may be available through your community center for independent living. Next slide, please. So what to do? Everyone in your household needs to know what to do when a smoke alarm sounds. If a fire starts in your home, you may have less than 2 minutes to escape quickly. Remember that, less than 2 minutes to escape quickly. Get out and stay out. Leave everything behind. Get out as quickly as you can and never go back into a burning building. If smoke or fire blocks one of your ways out, use another way out. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. If you must go through smoke, get low and go under the smoke to escape. Everyone in your household should plan to meet at a designated safe meeting place and then call 911 from the safe place outside of your home. Next slide, please. So your plan your escape routes. We talked a little bit about home fire. So now let's talk about your plan, your escape plan. Each room should have 2 exits, such as a door and a window. Make sure that windows and doors open easily and allow for quick escape. If your home has security bars, make sure the bars have emergency release devices inside so that they can be opened immediately in the event of emergency. If they don't, make sure you're planning on how to get out in the event of a fire so that you avoid those windows that may have those bars on them if they're not easily released. Consider escape ladders for second floor sleeping areas or homes on the second floor or above. It's also important to keep escape routes free of clutter and tripping hazards. As the diagram shows, each room has 2 ways out. The first escape path out of each room is through the door and then out of the house. The second escape plan is through the nearest window in each room. Next slide, please. Knowing how to quickly get out of your home is one part of the escape plan. It's only one part of the escape plan. A home fire is very confusing and may require several members to use different escape routes. This is why you need one specific safe meeting place where everyone will meet in the event of a home fire. Identify a location that is a safe distance from your home in a specific and fixed area. Make sure it is in front of the home so that you can easily meet firefighters and let them know where everyone is and that they're safe and accounted for. And then remember, always call 911 from a safe place outside your home. Next slide, please. It's vital that your escape plan works for everyone in your household. Make arrangements for infants, children, older adults, individuals with access or functional needs who may need assistance to escape during a home fire. Also include your pets in this escape plan. How are you going to get your pets out in the event of a fire? Make sure that someone in the household is assigned to each person or each pet who may require assistance, and be sure to identify a backup person in the case the primary person is not home during the fire. In the example listed on the screen, the family has a 2-year-old son who will need help to evacuate. Mom is the primary person and dad will help if mom is away. Remember, smoke alarms may not always wake up children in the event of a home fire. And then once your plan is complete, written down and shared with all household members, ours is on our refrigerator, so we see it every time we come into the kitchen. It should be practiced at least twice a year. If you have someone with access or functional needs, you should have a personal support network to assist during an emergency. Be sure to include them in your practice drills. Practicing makes sure the plan will actually work for everyone as expected. If not, you can make the necessary adjustments and practice again. Next slide. Did you know that children under 5 are twice as likely as other people to die in a home fire? Children need to be confident in their ability to prepare for and react to a home fire. You can ensure this when you teach them about the dangers of fire and make sure they understand that matches and lighters are not toys. Teach them that smoke alarms what they sound like and how to react when a smoke alarm goes off. Make sure each child knows and practices at least 2 ways to escape from every room and to meet at your designated safe meeting place. And then emphasize the get out, stay out rule. If you have escape ladders, make sure they are stored near windows and teach everyone how to use them. If you have bars on windows or doors, make sure they practice how to release them. Make sure everyone knows how to call 911 and that they understand the call should be made from a safe place outside the home. Next slide. In a closed room, there are a few more things that are important when you have to escape from a home fire. So look for smoke coming through cracks around the door. Before opening your door, feel the door with the back of your hand. If it's hot, leave the door closed and use your second way out. As a last resort, if you're unable to evacuate, seal your door by placing a cloth around any cracks and openings to keep the smoke out. Block all air vents and call 911. Tell them where you are and then signal for help at the window with a light colored cloth or a flashlight. Remember to practice this with everyone in the household. So you've gotten a lot of information today. So let's review a little bit on how you can keep the members of your household safe with a few easy steps. Make a home fire escape plan. Test your smoke alarms monthly. And be sure to practice your home fire escape plan at least twice a year with your entire household. And handing it over to you, Laura.
Super. We're going to spend a few minutes just talking about thunderstorms as we're heading into this season. And then we'll wrap up and answer any questions that we have left. So let's talk about thunderstorms. This is one of the hazards that we face in the area that we live here in the Mid-Atlantic. And we are heading right into this season now. So every thunderstorm produces lightning and thunder. They're associated with dangers such as hail, strong winds, and tornadoes. Heavy rain that's produced by thunderstorms can also cause standing water and flash flooding. So this can be a rather common occurrence where we live. A thunderstorm is considered severe if it produces hail at least 1 inch in diameter and has wind gusts of at least 58 miles per hour, or produces a tornado, which can also come with thunderstorms. So hail that size, of course, can be dangerous to your safety. It can cause damage to plants, roofs, and vehicles. And winds that speed are capable of breaking off large tree branches, knocking over entire trees, and damaging utility poles, which also cause widespread power outages. So both regular thunderstorms and severe thunderstorms can be dangerous, especially given that they both produce lightning. Lightning can strike as far as 10 miles away from where rain is falling. When lightning happens without rainfall, it's called dry lightning, and it may cause wildfires. It's not necessarily a common occurrence here where we are, but that is a possibility, I guess. So about 25 million lightning strikes happen a year, and they cause injuries to about 300 people and kill about 80 people annually. So thankfully, most lightning victims survive, but some may suffer various long-term debilitating effects. So it is legit to be prepared. So let's talk about understanding the difference between a watch and a warning. Our safety depends on understanding thunderstorms and staying informed about conditions. Weather forecasters use 2 types of alerts that I'm sure that you are familiar with the language of, at least when they describe the potential for severe thunderstorms. There is a watch and there's a warning, and it's important to know the difference and what to do in each instance. So a severe thunderstorm watch is issued when conditions are favorable for severe thunderstorms to develop. If a watch is issued, you should stay informed by listening to your NOAA weather radio or watching your local news or tuning into whatever alert system you use to keep track of the weather, and also review your severe thunderstorm disaster plan and be ready to move to a safe space. A severe thunderstorm warning is issued when a severe thunderstorm has been seen on the weather radar and when there are reports of hail, or when there are reports of hail greater than that 1 inch in diameter or winds exceeding 58 miles per hour. A severe thunderstorm warning is usually in effect for at least 1 hour and may be combined with a flash flood or a tornado warning. If a warning is issued, you should seek safe shelter immediately. So to sum this up, a watch is when the conditions are present and it might happen, but a warning means that it is happening. So the way to think about that is, in the instance of a watch, we want to be prepared. We want to be getting prepared. And when we hear that there is a warning, a weather warning, we need to take action. Okay. And so A watch does not always happen before a warning because weather changes quickly. Thunderstorms are unpredictable. They can form rapidly. And so sometimes there is not time to actually issue a watch before a warning takes place and you just need to take action. Okay, so at this point, we hope you've already taken some steps to prepare for a disaster, collected some essential disaster supplies, as we discussed earlier, created a disaster plan, and have become informed just about preparedness in general, which you're doing by being here right now. And since we've already talked about some of those general preparedness elements and Sonce focused on home fires, we're going to discuss some extra steps that we can take to be ready for thunderstorms. So making sure your disaster kit has those working flashlights and batteries, right? Because a power outage is a common occurrence with a thunderstorm. So tailoring the plan for what we will do during a severe thunderstorm, including how we manage our pets. Okay, so talking to the members of our household, what about what we should expect, what happens, what should we expect, identifying safe and appropriate shelters and the places where we spend time. So home, work, school, or places that we commonly play or hang out. And once we've done that, practicing getting to those places quickly. If anyone in our household relies on that personal support network that we talked about earlier, including them in our practice when we do so. Okay. And then, of course, being certain that we can stay informed by having access to our NOAA radio broadcast. So if you don't currently have a battery powered or a hand crank radio, consider getting one. That's really a helpful part of an emergency preparedness kit. And then signing up for your emergency notifications in your area, text alerts, emails, if you watch them on Instagram or Facebook or some other media outlet that you find reliable. And then, of course, when the thunder roars, go indoors. The best way to stay safe during a thunderstorm is to go inside a sturdy building. If you can hear thunder, you're close enough to be struck by lightning. So when thunder roars, go indoors. And being inside a sturdy building can protect you from lightning, hail, damaging winds, tornadoes, and flooding that are caused by rain, of course. So some other things for us to consider once we're inside are to make sure our windows are shuttered and the outside doors are closed securely, staying away from those windows and any windows and porches, because that will provide us extra protection from that hail and from the strong winds. Unplugging appliances and electronics to prevent damage from potential power surges is also a useful action to take. Avoiding contact with anything that conducts electricity, metal window frames, landline phones, running water, plumbing, electrical equipment, okay? Because electricity can travel through plumbing and phone lines. Staying informed of the weather, right? We keep saying that, but staying informed of what is happening through battery powered or hand crank TV or radio. If you're outside when thunderstorm strikes and can't get inside the sturdy building, there are some things you can do to help protect yourself. Avoiding open spaces, isolated tall objects, trees, hilltops, ridges, metal objects such as fences, bleachers, and poles. Okay, so stay away from those things. Picnic shelters, dugouts, and shed are not considered safe during a thunderstorm. So if you have an alternative sturdy shelter to go to, that's where you should go. If you're swimming or boating, get out of the water, stop immediately and find shelter. And again, if you are in a vehicle, a hard top car, while it's still possible to get injured if lightning strikes, you're much safer in a vehicle than you are outside a vehicle. Okay, so a hard top car, and that means not a convertible, basically. So if you're driving when a thunderstorm strikes, exit the roadway, park and turn off the ignition, stay in the vehicle, turn on emergency flashers, close the doors and windows or sunroof, don't touch any metal surfaces until the thunderstorm ends. So the National Weather Service recommends that you stay inside for at least 30 minutes after the last sound of thunder. Okay, so 30 minutes from the last roar of thunder is your guideline. All right, so following that thunderstorm, once it has passed, checking for injuries, letting friends and family know that you're safe. If someone near you has been struck by lightning, obviously calling 911 immediately is critical. Lightning strike vehicles don't retain their electrical charge from the lightning, so they can be given first aid until emergency personnel arrive. If the person stopped breathing, starting CPR. If the person's breathing normally, looking for other possible injuries and caring for them as appropriate and necessary. If your house has been struck by lightning, calling the fire department and ask them to check for hot spots in your walls, roof, or attic. After the fire department has thoroughly checked your home, making sure your smoke alarms are operating properly, and consider having a licensed electrician check your home's wiring to make sure it's sound. Being prepared for additional heavy rain and strong winds that could continue after the initial thunderstorm has passed. So, and then also, of course, using extra caution when you're driving, because the wind and the rain the traffic lights are often out. There's often debris in the roadway that can make driving challenging. So wherever you are, watch for additional hazards that may result from the thunderstorm. Never, ever, ever drive through a flooded roadway. You cannot predict how deep the water may be. So we always say, turn around, don't drown. It's not worth it. Keep well away from loose or down power lines, report them immediately to the power company. If you have a generator, being familiar with the operating instructions, taking extra precautions to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning, electrocution, and fire. And then there's additional information about those elements, generators, and the proper use of generators on the American Red Cross website, which we'll share with you at the end of our presentation today, so that you can check that out if that is pertinent to you. And then, of course, remembering your pets, because thunderstorm is alarming. It's noisy, and losing power can be alarming. And then having lightning strike in the middle of that can be disconcerting. So keeping an eye on animals, keeping them under your direct control. If you encounter an abandoned pet, using caution, because the combination of confused dogs and stressed people increases the incidence of dog bites after a disaster. So, and then of course, being sure to stay informed by continuing to listen to the local news and the NOAA weather radio for any updated instructions or information. So if you have the time and resources, there are some things that you can do to get your home ready for a thunderstorm. So this can be part of that being prepared element. So making sure your trees and bushes are more wind resistant by keeping their branches trimmed. Consulting the local fire department for guidance about installing lightning rods. Ensuring that any structures that house your animals outside are protected in the same way that you would protect your home. And then, of course, making a list of items to secure and bring inside before a thunderstorm strikes. So anything that we have in our outdoor space, if we have a yard or a deck, or that sometimes helps us not forget anything that could also cause another problem for us if we have strong winds and a thunderstorm. And then consider buying flood insurance, because homeowners insurance doesn't typically cover flood damage. And this information, there's information about this at floodsmart.gov, which, let's see, I'm going to see if I can throw that in the chat real quick. So that is an area that you can also find additional information. All right, so, okay, so now that we've gone over some of the preparedness essentials, and we focused on the disasters that could happen in our area and things that we want to be prepared for. Let's cover a few more considerations for after a disaster. And let's start with communication. So since communication is such an important part of an emergency preparedness plan, I just want to talk about it a little bit more. Okay. So the example that we see here is of an emergency contact card. And we really want to have a contact card for each of our household members and keep them with them at all times. It's meant to record the names and numbers of work and school and cell phone. And because it's possible for our batteries die and our cell phone network may not be functioning, or we may not have power, we may not have access to the saved phone numbers in our electronic devices. So we really want to make sure that we know what those numbers are. These are things we want in our emergency preparedness essentials kit. We can leave them in our car. We can keep them in our wallet, in our purse. But it's a great idea to make sure that we have those things available. If there are children in our household, or everyone should have access to that. And then in addition to that, it would be a great idea to choose an emergency contact and have everyone memorize that phone number. So someone who is outside those who are in our household, that during a disaster, that our household members could all text or call that person to let them know that they're safe. And it may be important to include at least one friend or relative who actually lives out of town and isn't affected by that disaster, right? And so if we had gotten separated, we could all contact that person and they would be able to help reconnect us and know that we were all safe. So, and especially because in regional emergencies, sometimes the landlines and mobile phone calls to others in the area are difficult to make. So it can be easier to reach people outside our area. Okay. Oh, the other thing is that I just want to mention, and you can see it on this slide, is the Safe and Well website. So in a major disaster, phone lines are down and travel can be difficult. And so if you get separated, you can use the web link here, and it provides a central location online that people in disaster areas can register their status so that their loved ones can find out where they are and inquire about their well-being. So it helps people locate each other and make sure that they're safe. It's free. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And there's also access in English and Spanish. So that it's a really helpful tool if needed. All right, so we talked a little about being informed and how important it is to know what hazards to prepare for, but this is an ongoing process. So knowing how your community warns of a disaster, right? So we talked about those text alerts or email alerts, whatever you're signed up for. Some communities have outdoor sirens, or some just rely on those media alerts that I mentioned before. So knowing what is available and being signed up for that in your community is important. How do they alert the residents for those severe weather or those dangerous events? And again, we keep going back to the NOAA weather radio or your local radio weather station, television station. Whatever updates you get online are all ways that you can stay updated. Again, remembering, understanding the difference between a watch, which means the conditions are right and it could occur, that emergency could occur, or a warning, which means that it is occurring. So the difference between getting prepared and taking action, right? We're watching for it, or it's happening and we have a warning, okay? And they are not exclusive. So they don't necessarily happen in order. Sometimes they go out of order and that confuses us. So knowing what they are is important. Learning about an area that you're traveling to, right? Because like we mentioned, that in different areas of the country, there are different hazards to be aware of in different seasons. So understanding how to be prepared when we're traveling, even on vacation, and how we can protect ourselves. The Red Cross also offers emergency apps that are free that you can locate on through the App Store on your mobile device, and they're really helpful for reviewing your first aid or other emergency action plans, what to do in this instance. There's even one for children called Monster Guard. That's kind of a fun way for them to learn about what to do in an emergency. So we're going to talk real quick about our emotional health after a disaster, and then we'll close out and open it up for questions. So we've talked today about how to prepare for a disaster. We must also recognize the need to be ready for the aftermath of a disaster should one occur. Disasters are stressful. And the good news is that there are things we can do to cope with that stress. And so first, being aware of the feelings that come with disasters. And I find that this is actually particularly pertinent considering what we've been going through for the last year. So even though we didn't just experience a major disaster moments ago, there are lots of people who are experiencing some of the kinds of feelings and emotional strain that we'll talk about here for a minute. So feeling physically and mentally drained, having difficulty making decisions, having difficulty focusing, becoming easily frustrated, being more argumentative than usual with our friends and family and people we care about, feeling sad, numb, lonely, or worried, experiencing changes in our appetite or our sleep patterns, are things that are really common after a disaster. And so things that we can think about doing to help deal with stress include making sure that our loved ones are safe, right? Eating healthy, drinking water, making sure that we're drinking enough water, getting enough sleep and rest, staying connected with the people that we care about, being extra patient with ourselves and those people around us, setting our priorities and breaking down our tasks into smaller ones so that we don't feel so overwhelmed, gathering information about help and resources, and then of course, staying positive and helping others. So if the stress worsens or continues on or worsens, or if you or someone you know is feeling life isn't worth living, then we would strongly encourage you to seek immediate help. And then, of course, children are also affected by the stress of disasters, and they depend on us to help them cope, especially when they experience a big change related to that disaster. So if they have to evacuate and leave the space that they live in are most comfortable, if they are injured in the disaster or the emergency, if they see people who were injured in the disaster emergency, or if they experience death or see dying people, in particular relatives, friends, or pets, right? All of this may be made worse if they've experienced other disasters or traumatic events in the past. Stress can be magnified by temporarily living elsewhere, by losing contact with friends, by losing things important to them, parental job loss, and household financial stress. It's helpful for us to remember that how we react impacts how they react. So children sense the confidence that we feel. They sense the calm that we feel from being prepared. Something to keep in mind. So before a disaster, we can help them build their confidence by including them when we make a household plan and encouraging them to talk, to listen, us listening to them, hearing about their fears and concerns, and then answering their questions as simply as possible. During and after an event, spending extra time with them, and as soon as possible, reestablishing their daily routines so they can go back to their version of normalcy. And then, of course, limiting media exposure so that we're helping to control that input is helpful. Okay, let's wrap up by talking about some tools that are available, because we talked through a lot of information today. The first is the emergency contact cards, and I think we threw the link in the chat, so those are available, making sure everyone in the household has one available to them. They know how to contact, who we contact, who's that external emergency contact, and what are everyone's phone numbers, not just on our mobile device, but in our hand, written down on paper. The Red Cross Safe and Well website we talked about as being a resource in the event of a major disaster, figuring out where people are, that they're safe and well, basically, is the theme of that. the emergency and first aid apps you can put on your mobile devices. Those are meant to be resources that you can use at any time, not just during a disaster, but in advance. They're really helpful. And then just remember that you can't count on technology alone, that phones break and lose their charge and we lose coverage. And sometimes phone lines become overwhelmed, particularly in an emergency. So be sure to think about how you are going to communicate if those things become unavailable.
Thank you for your attention today. You've gotten started by becoming aware of how to prepare for disasters and learning about the different types of disasters in the area. To be fully prepared, be sure to create and practice your disaster plan, build your kits, put a little bit of information there in the chat, and become informed about your community. Also, please consider taking a Red Cross first aid class or becoming a Red Cross volunteer. And then, so if you'd like any additional information about this presentation or anything else the Red Cross provides, check out redcross.org or talk to Laura or myself. We're always happy to assist. If you found today's workshop helpful, please recommend it to your friends, neighbors, and coworkers. Also, we ask that you consider making a pledge to prepare, and we can put that link in the chat as well. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Not to cut our Q&A short, but just want to be mindful of folks' time. I know I have certainly a lot of work to do and will be taking today's lessons and putting them into action. So thank you both so much for your time and all of your insights and advice. We are so appreciative, and this will again live on the Collegetown website and YouTube channel. And with that, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of this chilly, we're back in wintry March time, this chilly afternoon. Hopefully we'll get some springtime temps coming up as well. Round of applause. Thank you so much. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and stay tuned for that follow-up email tomorrow. Be Red Cross ready.